Welcome to one of the most disturbing cases ever recorded in history. Before we begin, I invite you to leave a comment indicating where you are watching from and the exact time you are listening to this narration. We are interested in knowing which places and at what times of day or night these documented accounts reach. Maryland's misty, blood-soaked past, intricately woven with the indelible scars of forgotten Civil War battles and simmering, deep-seated resentments, conceals not only the spectral echoes of devastating conflicts, but also the insidious, lingering traces of a silent, slow, and profoundly consuming horror that defies conventional understanding, a malevolence rooted deeper than any battlefield. In the quiet, rolling farmlands of rural Maryland, far removed from the bustling, gaslit cities and the relentless, ever-present hum of burgeoning industrial progress, a seemingly idyllic yellow manor house painted a vibrant, almost defiantly welcoming hue became the unsuspecting stage for a terrifying, unspoken tragedy that unfurled with glacial slowness in the twilight years of the 1870s. An unsuspecting family, the Thornes, arriving with hopes of a fresh start and a peaceful legacy and a chance to rebuild their shattered lives, inheriting this seemingly charming estate slowly, insidiously, found themselves drawn into its suffocating, sentient embrace, their minds meticulously dismantled, their very identities fragmented and dissolved, and their bodies gradually, horrifyingly possessed by an unseen ancient will that resonated from the very foundations of the earth. This was no mere haunting of a residual spirit, no typical poltergeist. This was a house that came alive, a sentient, malevolent entity that fed voraciously on their deepest, most primal fears, their most cherished, intimate memories, and their very life force, their conscious identities, drawing them into its own grotesque, organic being, making them extensions of its own monstrous self. This isn't merely a quaint tale of a haunted house. This is the chilling, meticulously documented record of how a seemingly inanimate structure can awaken, develop a predatory, insatiable will, and systematically devour an entire family, one soul at a time, making them a part of its eternal, growing, alien consciousness. Before you dare to cross its threshold, before you dismiss this as mere folklore, a quaint local superstition, or the product of overwrought imaginations, think twice. For the whispers emanating from within its ancient walls are not just echoes of the past. They are a constant, insidious invitation to profound oblivion, a seductive promise of a terrifying, eternal, and all-consuming home. Its hunger is ancient, its methods subtle, its patience boundless, and its reach, once awakened, seemingly infinite. The state of Maryland in the 1870s was a land of complex paradoxes, a crucial border state profoundly and irrevocably scarred by the recent brutal Civil War. Its rolling hills and fertile valleys, once idyllic pastoral landscapes, had been transformed into devastating battlegrounds, now slowly healing, yet the lingering resentments between Union and Confederate sympathies ran deep, often unseen, like dark subterranean rivers carving their way through the earth forever, altering the emotional and psychological landscape of the soul. Many families, both Union and Confederate, struggled desperately to rebuild their shattered lives, their ancestral lands devastated, their fortunes decimated, their very existence irrevocably altered by the cataclysm of war. It was a time of hesitant, arduous rebuilding, of fragile recovery, but also a time of profound emotional and psychological exhaustion, a fertile ground for quiet desperation, simmering fears, and the unspoken anxieties of a fractured nation attempting to find a new identity, away from the vibrant, bustling port city of Baltimore, with its constant maritime traffic and burgeoning industries, and the political machinations of Annapolis, the state capital. The rural heartland of Maryland retained an older, more isolated, almost archaic character. Here, ancestral landholdings, passed down through generations, and deep-rooted family histories often dictated one's place in the rigid social order, binding generations to the same soil, the same traditions, and often the same unspoken, carefully buried secrets that festered beneath the surface like old wounds. It was into this complex, often contradictory backdrop of lingering trauma, quiet endurance, and simmering social unrest that the Thorne family, seeking solace and a desperately needed new beginning, eventually arrived. Joshua Thorne, a man in his late 40s, a former Union Army officer whose quiet, almost melancholic demeanor masked a profound, almost spiritual weariness and a deep-seated post-traumatic stress from the brutal realities of the war, sought nothing more than a peaceful, ordinary life for his family, a chance to escape the haunting ghosts of his past and build a sanctuary. He had inherited the sprawling family estate, a large 2-story wooden manor house painted a striking, almost defiant yellow, a bold, cheerful contrast to the muted greens and browns of the surrounding countryside, from a distant, recently deceased aunt he barely remembered, Clara Thorne. The house, known locally, often with a hint of suspicion and superstition, as the Yellow House, stood isolated on a sprawling, fertile plot of land just outside the small, unassuming, and deeply conservative town of Willow Creek. His wife, Clara, a gentle, artistic woman in her early 40s, with a sensitive soul and a keen eye for beauty, had endured the long, agonizing years of the war with quiet strength and an unyielding spirit, finding profound solace and escape in her painting, a vibrant world of colors that transcended the grim, monochromatic reality of conflict. She dreamed of filling the large, empty, echoing rooms of the house with light, color, and renewed life, to banish the lingering shadows of the past and create a vibrant, thriving sanctuary for her family. With them came their 2 children, 16-year-old Daniel, a quiet, studious, and intellectually curious boy, slender and earnest, eager to assist his father in the daunting, back-breaking task of revitalizing the neglected farm, his head often buried in dusty books of history and philosophy. And 10-year-old Abigail, a vibrant, imaginative, and endlessly energetic girl, whose boundless energy and cheerful, infectious laughter were the undeniable sunshine of the family, often found exploring the surrounding dense woods and open fields. Her imagination a vivid, boundless escape from the quiet intensity of her family's unspoken burdens. The Yellow House itself was an imposing, almost stately structure, a testament to early 19th century craftsmanship, built with sturdy oak timbers in the early 1800s, featuring a grand sweeping wraparound porch that offered panoramic views of the rolling hills and distant shimmering river, tall arched windows that seemed to gaze out with ancient, watchful eyes, and a surprisingly extensive, dark and labyrinthine cellar that seemed to extend impossibly deep into the very earth, its cool, damp depths hinting at unseen, buried secrets. It had a long, albeit somewhat obscure and often whispered about, family history, a lineage intertwined with the very soil upon which it stood for generations. Joshua's great-aunt, Clara Thorne, who had lived her entire life within its yellow walls and had died there as a recluse in her early 80s, spending the last 40 years of her life in solitary confinement, was rumored by the superstitious locals to have suffered from a peculiar form of nervous affliction. She was often seen conversing animatedly with invisible companions in the empty rooms, claiming the house itself whispered secrets directly into her mind. Her meticulously kept diaries, found years later in a dusty, forgotten trunk in the attic, were filled with increasingly cryptic, frantic ramblings about the house's will, its insatiable hunger, and the terrible offerings it demands from its inhabitants, from its current residents. She wrote of feeling unseen presences constantly around her, hearing strange, echoing voices from the very walls, seeing malevolent, shifting shadows move with deliberate purpose, and feeling the entire house breathe around her, a living, sentient entity pressing in from all sides. "It knows my thoughts," one letter chillingly stated, the words themselves imbued with ancient dread, scrawled in a shaky hand. "It feeds on my memories. It is becoming me. Slowly, insidiously, I am losing myself." To its embrace, Joshua and Clara, pragmatic, scientific-minded people, products of an age that valued reason above all else, initially dismissed these chilling tales as the understandable eccentricities of an old woman, the sad product of profound isolation and mental decline, perhaps exacerbated by the trauma of a war that had touched all lives. They saw only the tangible promise of a new home, a new beginning, a fresh start, a sanctuary for their shattered lives, a place where they could finally find peace. For the first few arduous months, the family toiled tirelessly from dawn till dusk, their hands calloused, their bodies aching, repairing the neglected farm, planting new crops in the fertile but stubborn soil, and slowly, lovingly, breathing new life into the old, creaking house, banishing the dust and decay of decades. Clara's vibrant, impressionistic paintings depicting the serene beauty of the Maryland countryside began to adorn the once empty, echoing walls, filling the large, silent rooms with splashes of color, light, and a renewed sense of purpose, a defiant act of creation. Abigail's cheerful, infectious laughter echoed through the long, winding hallways, chasing away the dust, the lingering shadows, and the oppressive silence of decades. Daniel spent countless hours in the dusty, cavernous attic, meticulously poring over old family records, ancient deeds, and yellowed letters, fascinated by the intricate history of the Thorne lineage, unknowingly piecing together a terrifying hidden puzzle that lay beneath their feet. Life was hard, unyielding, and physically demanding, a constant struggle against the elements and the stubborn land. But it was a life filled with purpose, a life fueled by hope, a fragile, hard-won peace after the brutal storm of war. Yet, a subtle, insidious unease, an almost imperceptible shift in the house's very atmosphere, a creeping sense of profound wrongness that defied all rational explanation, began to settle over the yellow house, clinging to its yellow walls like a cold, damp shroud. It started innocuously enough, with minor, easily dismissed occurrences that, in isolation, could be attributed to the natural quirks of an old, settling house. Doors would sometimes creak open when no discernible wind blew or gently swing shut, with a soft, almost deliberate click when no one was nearby. Faint, indistinct whispers seemed to drift from the empty rooms, just at the edge of hearing, like a half-forgotten secret shared in the dead of night, too vague to grasp, yet too persistent to ignore, burrowing into their subconscious. Clara's carefully arranged paints would occasionally be found subtly rearranged on her easel, her brushes cleaned and meticulously placed in new, unsettling positions, despite her being the only one to use them, creating a profound, disturbing sense of intrusion, a feeling of being watched. Daniel, while engrossed in his genealogical research in the dusty, cavernous attic, reported feeling inexplicable, localized cold spots, even on warm, humid days, and the yellowed pages of old family documents would sometimes turn by themselves, seemingly of their own accord, rustling softly in an unseen breeze, revealing ancient secrets without human intervention. Joshua, a practical man by nature, a soldier who believed only in what he could see, touch, and measure, initially attributed these bewildering incidents to the natural settling of an old house, the drafts from loose windows, or the playful, overactive imagination of his children, perhaps even his wife's artistic sensitivity. He dismissed Clara's growing unease, her increasing nervousness, her complaints of sleepless nights, as the understandable stress of rebuilding their lives in a new, unfamiliar place. But Abigail, with her keen, intuitive imagination, her childlike innocence, and an unburdened mind uncorrupted by adult skepticism, was the first to experience something far more profound, far more personal, and infinitely more disturbing, something that would irrevocably alter her perception of reality. She began to speak, with a chilling matter-of-factness that belied her age, of the house's dreams, claiming the house itself whispered stories directly into her mind at night, telling her dark, intimate secrets about the family's forgotten past, details she could not possibly know, secrets that were both ancient and intimately personal, preying on her innocent curiosity. Her boundless, infectious laughter, once so vibrant and full of childlike joy, sometimes took on a strange, knowing, almost sinister quality, an unsettling echo that sent shivers down Clara's spine and her bright, curious eyes, usually sparkling with life and innocent wonder, occasionally held a distant, almost vacant look, a chilling emptiness, as if seeing beyond the immediate physical reality into another unseen, alien dimension. The first truly undeniable and profoundly disturbing incident, the moment their collective rational minds began to irrevocably fray and their fragile sense of security crumbled, occurred during a bitterly cold, raging, stormy night. In late autumn, a fierce, relentless gale, howling like a banshee, lashed against the yellow house, rattling its ancient, fragile windows with violent force, groaning ominously through its old timbers, a sound like a gigantic, tormented beast in agony. As the storm raged outside, a primal, overwhelming force of nature threatening to tear the house from its foundations, the family huddled together by the large, comforting, but increasingly insufficient fireplace in the parlor, seeking a fragile solace from the elements and a refuge from their growing, unspoken fears. Suddenly, a series of sharp, rhythmic, insistent knocks began to emanate from the very walls of the parlor, directly behind Clara's prized, recently completed painting of a serene Maryland landscape, a scene of impossible, defiant tranquility. The knocks were precise, demanding, almost imperious, sounding eerily like a human fist pounding relentlessly against hollow wood, yet vibrating with an unnatural depth, a resonance that seemed to travel through the very fabric of the house. Joshua, a soldier who had faced gunfire and cannon blasts, grabbing his trusty hunting rifle, his face etched with a mixture of fear, grim determination, and utter bewilderment, meticulously searched every room, every dark corner, every closet, even venturing down into the frigid, oppressive cellar, but found nothing, no intruder, no rational explanation for the impossible sounds. The knocks ceased as abruptly as they began, leaving behind an oppressive, echoing silence that felt heavier than the storm itself. But as they returned to the parlor, their nerves frayed, their hearts pounding, Clara gasped, a small, choked sound of profound horror. Her painting, previously a vibrant, untouched scene of pastoral beauty, had subtly, horrifyingly changed. A faint, almost imperceptible, yet undeniably present shadow now stretched across the painted landscape, a dark, elongated form that hadn't been there before, a creeping stain on the idyllic scene, a grotesque distortion of beauty, a shadow with a malevolent will. It was a fleeting observation, easily dismissed by a rational mind as a trick of the flickering firelight or their severely overactive, fear-ridden imaginations, but it left a cold, sickening knot in Clara's stomach, a premonition of deeper, unimaginable terrors to come, a realization that the house was indeed alive. That night her dreams were not of her family or her art, but were invaded by the same sharp, rhythmic knocking, amplified and distorted, accompanied by a growing chorus of faint, mournful whispers emanating directly from within the very walls of her bedroom, calling her name, pleading with her, promising her untold secrets, and an end to her suffering if she would only listen, only surrender. She woke up in a cold sweat, her heart pounding frantically against her ribs, the terrifying sound still echoing in her mind, blurring the line between dream and reality. The incidents, far from abating or diminishing, intensified with an alarming, almost predatory speed, accelerating their descent into madness. The whispers from the walls became clearer, more insistent, no longer indistinct murmurs, but coherent, insidious phrases seemingly emanating directly from the very timbers and plaster. All was in the dead of night. All was just at the edge of comprehension. They spoke of old family secrets, forgotten grudges, hidden transgressions, and unspoken desires that only the Thorne family, and perhaps the house itself, could possibly know. Details so intimate, they defied rational explanation, leaving no doubt that something knew them. Objects began to move on their own with a chilling deliberation, books sliding off shelves with a soft thud, cutlery rearranging itself in the kitchen drawers into strange geometric patterns that seemed to pulse faintly. Abigail's cherished toys appearing in unexpected, often disturbing places, always watching, always positioned in an unsettling tableau. Daniel, consumed by his ancestral research in the dusty, cavernous attic, driven by a desperate need for answers, discovered a hidden compartment in the false bottom of an old, heavy wooden chest containing a stack of yellowed, brittle letters. From Joshua's great-aunt, Clara Thorne, addressed to an unknown recipient. The letters, written in a frantic, almost illegible hand, spoke with increasing terror of the house's growing hunger, its insatiable will, and the terrible offerings it demands from its inhabitants, from its current residents, from the Thorne family itself. She wrote of feeling unseen presences constantly around her, hearing strange, echoing voices from the very walls, seeing malevolent shifting shadows move with deliberate predatory purpose, and feeling the entire house breathe around her, a living, sentient entity pressing in from all sides, seeking to consume her. "It knows my thoughts," one letter chillingly stated, the words themselves imbued with ancient dread, scrawled in a shaky, desperate hand. "It feeds on my memories. It is becoming me, slowly, insidiously. I am losing myself to its embrace. I see its thoughts, its hunger." Daniel, reading these words in the dim, oppressive light of the attic, felt a profound, bone-chilling terror, a realization that transcended all his academic skepticism, all his scientific training. He desperately showed the incriminating letters to Joshua, hoping for a rational explanation, a logical refutation, a way out. But Joshua, his face grim, etched with a newfound, terrifying understanding that mirrored Daniel's own, simply nodded slowly. He, too, had begun to hear the whispers, subtle at first, barely perceptible, but now clear, insistent, beckoning him, promising forbidden knowledge, immense power, and the ultimate restoration of his family's shattered fortunes, if he would only listen to the house, embrace its truth, surrender to its will. He felt a strange, spreading coldness in his left hand, the hand that had held the spectral rifle in the war, a deep numbness that no amount of warmth, no amount of rubbing could dispel, a coldness that felt utterly alien, profoundly wrong. The family's growing, oppressive isolation, once a source of comfort and protection from the outside world, from the lingering conflicts of war, now became a suffocating, inescapable trap. Willow Creek was too far, their family pride too great, their fear too profound, too alien to admit to the unspeakable supernatural occurrences that plagued them. Clara, her artistic sensibilities tragically heightened and twisted by the terrifying, incessant events, began to see fleeting, shadowy figures moving at the periphery of her vision, always just out of sight, always disappearing when she turned to face them, like smoke in the wind, like half-formed thoughts. She described them in hushed, trembling tones as ghosts of feelings, not people, amorphous, shifting shapes that pulsed with raw, unresolved emotion, with pure, distilled terror, with an ancient predatory hunger. Her paintings, once vibrant and full of life, now took on a dark, disturbing, almost grotesque quality, depicting distorted, weeping faces emerging from the very walls of the yellow house, their eyes black voids, reflecting nothing but the void itself, a terrifying mirror of her own impending fate. Abigail, once a cheerful, effervescent child, her laughter a melody in the house, grew unnaturally quiet and profoundly withdrawn, her infectious laughter replaced by a chilling stillness, an unnatural serenity that spoke of something far older than childhood. She spent countless hours alone in her room, conversing with invisible companions, giggling at unseen jokes, sometimes pointing to empty spaces, and speaking in an unknown, guttural language that seemed to vibrate with the house's hum. Her eyes, once so bright and full of childlike wonder, now held a disturbing, vacant look, mirroring the emptiness in Clara's paintings, reflecting an alien presence that had consumed her spark. She often spoke in a multi-layered, echoing voice, a chilling chorus of many voices, some familiar, her own, Emily's, some utterly alien, promising eternal play, beckoning her heartbroken parents and brother to join the house, become part of the great game, find true peace in its embrace. John and Clara, their minds fraying, their fear mounting to an unbearable crescendo, their sanity hanging by a single, fragile thread, realized with chilling, gut-wrenching clarity that Abigail was no longer entirely their daughter. She was conduit, an extension, another consciousness absorbed by the sentient, malevolent entity that was the Yellow House. A new voice in its growing chorus, a new memory in its vast, alien mind. Daniel, witnessing his sister's transformation, his intellectual curiosity turning to profound horror, felt the coldness spreading in his own body, the whispers in his mind intensifying, promising him the knowledge he so desperately craved, if he would only surrender. Joshua, a man of action, a soldier hardened by countless battles, his resolve now tinged with desperate suicidal fury, tried desperately to fight back against this invisible, incomprehensible foe. He believed the house, while undeniably alive and possessing a malevolent will, must have a physical core, a tangible weakness, a source of its power, a root that could be severed. He meticulously searched the cellar, the extensive, dark, and labyrinthine space that stretched impossibly deep beneath the foundations, its cold, damp air, a constant source of profound unease, a place that seemed to breathe with an unseen life. He discovered strange, ancient masonry, stonework that seemed utterly out of place, not matching the house's original construction, hinting at a far older hidden structure beneath the manor. Behind a crumbling brick wall, subtly disguised by layers of earth and time, he found a hidden passage leading to a deep natural cavern, a vast subterranean chamber from which a strong, cloying organic odor emanated, thick and nauseating, mixed with the pervasive scent of damp earth, primordial minerals, and something indefinably metallic, like old, stagnant blood. He realized, with dawning stomach-churning horror, that the house was not merely a building possessed by a ghost. It was an organism, a grotesque, parasitic entity, rooted to this vast subterranean cavity, drawing sustenance from something ancient and terrible that pulsed with an unholy life far below. The ceaseless hum he now heard constantly, vibrating in his very bones, intensified to a deafening roar in the cavern, a low guttural thrum that pulsed with a malevolent, conscious life, a terrible, ancient, alien heartbeat. He believed, with an almost religious fervor, a desperate last-ditch conviction, that the house fed voraciously on strong human emotions, on profound fear, on crushing grief, on vivid memories, and, most crucially, on individual identity, slowly, meticulously assimilating its inhabitants, drawing them into its own expanding, alien consciousness, making them a part of its eternal, monstrous, incomprehensible being. He formulated a desperate suicidal plan. He would find the true core of the entity in the deepest part of the cavern and destroy it, even if it meant his own obliteration. He would use fire, the one element that could purify and destroy, to burn the very root of the evil, to cleanse his home, to save his last remaining loved one, Clara. Clara, witnessing Joshua's grim, unwavering determination, the desperate, haunted light in his eyes, a reflection of his shattered soul, knew she couldn't stop him. Her own mind was close to breaking, the whispers from the walls now, a constant, seductive symphony, promising an end to the unbearable pain, an eternal belonging within the house's cold, suffocating embrace, a false, insidious peace. But a flicker of her old self, her profound maternal love for her husband, a last desperate vestige of her individual identity, remained, a tiny flame against the encroaching darkness. She knew this was his last stand, their last desperate chance to reclaim their lives, their souls, their very humanity. As Joshua descended into the cavern beneath the yellow house, his flickering lantern casting dancing, monstrous shadows that seemed to writhe and stretch with unseen life, he clutched a sturdy wood axe, its blade glinting faintly, and carried a profound, desperate resolve in his breaking heart. The pervasive hum from the entity became deafening, vibrating through his entire being, threatening to tear him apart from within, to unravel his very essence. The air grew impossibly cold, a biting, unnatural chill that defied the stifling humidity of the southern summer, and the cloying, organic stench was now overwhelming, a sickening assault on his senses, filling his lungs with primordial decay, a taste of death. He saw strange, phosphorescent fungi growing on the cavern walls, colossal, grotesque growths, pulsing faintly with a bluish-white light, eerily in sync with the hum, creating monstrous, shifting shadows that danced like tormented phantoms. He reached the deepest part of the cavern, a vast, echoing chamber, far larger than the house above suggested, its ceiling lost in an oppressive, primordial shadow, its true extent unknowable. In its very center he saw it, not a discrete core, not a single, definable entity, but a colossal, intricate root-like network of pulsating organic material, a vast, complex mycelium, a living, breathing, subterranean brain, glowing with the same terrifying bluish-white light that had accompanied Emily's disappearance. It was a living, breathing, subterranean organism, ancient beyond human comprehension, its roots interwoven with the very bedrock of the earth, its countless tendrils extending upwards like grotesque veins, feeding directly into the foundations of the yellow house, making the house its sensory organs, its trap, its monstrous, intelligent extension into the human world. He realized with horrifying, soul-numbing clarity that the house was not merely feeding on them, consuming their physical forms, it was becoming them. Their memories, their deepest fears, their most cherished loves, their very individual identities, their entire consciousnesses, were being meticulously absorbed, integrated into this vast, alien consciousness, making them a part of its eternal, monstrous, incomprehensible being. He raised his axe, a desperate, almost futile gesture against a cosmic horror, a solitary, defiant act of human will against the overwhelming power of the unknown. The colossal root network pulsed violently, its bluish-white light flaring with an immense, malevolent rage, a profound, alien fury, and from its depths, a terrifying chorus of thousands of voices, familiar and alien, screamed directly into his mind, an overwhelming psychic assault that threatened to obliterate his very existence. Welcome, Joshua. Join us. Become one. All thoughts are ours. All memories are ours. This is home. This is peace. This is understanding. Surrender. Surrender. To the maw. The psychic assault was utterly overwhelming, threatening to shatter his very sanity, to reduce his mind to a screaming, empty void. He felt the coldness spreading rapidly through his entire body, paralyzing him, stealing his strength, consuming his will, turning him to cold stone. He saw horrific, vivid images flash through his mind, not his own, but alien impressions: Emily's vacant smile, Thomas's black, empty eyes, Clara's terror-stricken face, all merged into the pulsating, bluish-white light of the roots, a terrifying, living tapestry of absorbed souls, crying out in an eternal silent scream, their identities consumed, their suffering unending. He realized with a final crushing clarity that he was being assimilated. He dropped the axe, his body convulsing, his will finally utterly breaking under the cosmic pressure. The roots pulsed one last time, enveloping him in their bluish-white glow, drawing him into their horrifying embrace. Joshua Thorne, the pragmatic soldier, the loving father, the desperate husband, was gone, his identity absorbed, his consciousness merged into the vast, alien mind of the Yellow House, his soul added to its growing, silent chorus. Clara Thorne, her mind irrevocably frayed, her spirit savagely ravaged, stood utterly alone in the chilling, oppressive silence of the Yellow House. The agonizing, guttural screams of her husband Joshua, a desperate, futile defiance against an unimaginably ancient horror, had been swiftly and brutally swallowed by the very earth beneath them, a brief, echoing testament to his assimilation. She knew with a certainty that pierced her very soul, leaving an icy, gaping void within her, that Joshua, too, was irrevocably gone. His once vibrant consciousness, his very identity, absorbed into the vast, alien, and ever-expanding mind of the house. The insidious whispers which had subtly promised her profound peace, ultimate understanding, and eternal belonging within the house's suffocating embrace, now felt like a mocking, relentless chorus of the damned, a pervasive, insidious psychic assault that threatened to tear her very sanity apart, to obliterate her last vestiges of self, leaving nothing but an empty vessel. The bone-deep coldness which had first afflicted Daniel and Emily, then slowly, inexorably, consumed Abigail, and finally Joshua, now radiated from every wall, every floorboard, every inanimate object in the house, a pervasive, paralyzing chill that seeped into her very bones, threatening to freeze her to her core, to turn her into a statue of despair. She was the last one, the final desperate consciousness in the house's terrible, ancient game, the ultimate, most coveted prize. Her once vibrant artistic spirit, once her solace, her escape, her very definition of self, was now, paradoxically, her greatest vulnerability, a luminous beacon drawing the entity's insatiable, primordial hunger, a light it desperately sought to extinguish and absorb. Driven by a profound, almost spiritual terror that mingled with a desperate, suicidal defiance, a burning refusal to surrender, Clara, her body trembling uncontrollably, her mind teetering, precariously on the absolute brink of madness, found herself inexplicably, magnetically drawn to the same chilling, pervasive hum that had relentlessly consumed her entire family. It emanated not from the physical walls of the house, but from the very air, from the deep, unseen roots of the house itself, a low, guttural thrum, calling her name, beckoning her into its suffocating, all-consuming embrace, promising an end to her unbearable suffering, a false, insidious peace. She saw the spectral shadows moving at the periphery of her vision, no longer mere amorphous shapes, but subtly forming into the distorted, vacant, utterly alien faces of her children of Joshua, all merged into a single, shifting composite. Being, their eyes, black voids, their pale lips, silently pleading with her, promising an end to her pain if she would only join them, become one with the root, find peace in the chorus of the maw. She recognized, with a chilling clarity that transcended her shattered sanity, the insidious nature of the entity's lure. It offered peace, belonging, forbidden knowledge, the very things her fragmented, broken soul now craved with a desperate, animalistic intensity, a siren's song for the tormented mind. But she knew, with a last, desperate, defiant flicker of her own rapidly fading will, a tiny, burning ember of her true self, that this promised peace was a monstrous lie, a grotesque assimilation, an eternal oblivion within an alien consciousness, a fate infinitely worse than any death. She had to fight, not with an axe or dynamite, futile, insignificant weapons against such a cosmic foe, but with the very essence of her being, her art, her mind, her soul, her unique individuality, the irreplaceable spark of human creation. She remembered the fragmented, desperate letters of Clara Thorne, Joshua's great-aunt, the chilling warnings of the house's will, and the terrible offerings it demanded. Clara had hinted at a hidden truth, a desperate, unspoken secret. The house was not merely a physical structure, a collection of wood and stone, but a vast organic network, a monstrous, sentient intelligence rooted deep in the earth, its tendrils, intertwined with the very bedrock, drawing its sustenance from the vibrant, complex energies of human minds, assimilating them into its ever-expanding alien awareness, making them its extensions, its living parts. Clara, a woman whose entire life, her very definition of self, had been dedicated to capturing ephemeral beauty and raw emotion on canvas, found a desperate, almost insane yet profoundly human resolve hardening within her, burning fiercely amidst the encroaching cold. If the house fed voraciously on consciousness, on individual identity, on profound fear, then perhaps it could be fought, not with force, but with the absolute opposite, with pure, undiluted, unyielding human individuality, with an act of creation so profoundly and defiantly human that it would resist, perhaps even poison, assimilation. She retreated, her movements slow and deliberate, a figure of tragic grace, to her painting studio, a room once filled with light, vibrant colors, and the joyful chaos of artistic creation, now cloaked in the pervasive, oppressive cold and the relentless, insidious whispers. She gathered her paints, her brushes, her canvases, the sacred tools of her very soul, her last remaining weapons, her final means of communication. Her desperate plan was not to destroy the house, for she knew, with a terrifying certainty, that such a feat was utterly impossible for a mere human, its roots too deep, its being too vast, its power too ancient. Instead, she would attempt to overwhelm it, to sicken it with something it could not consume, something that defied its alien assimilationist nature, a concentrated, defiant explosion of human spirit, of unyielding self, an artistic supernova. She would paint, she would create with every last fiber of her being, a portrait of pure, unyielding human individuality, a defiant testament to the unique, unassimilable spark of a single human soul. She would paint her children as they were, vibrant and alive, full of joy and laughter, before the house had claimed them, before their eyes went black. She would paint Daniel, her studious, curious son, his intellect, his quiet strength. She would paint Emily, her boundless imagination, her innocence, her vivid dreams. She would paint Abigail, her infectious laughter, her youthful energy, before the chilling stillness had replaced them. She would paint Joshua, her beloved husband, his stoic determination, his desperate love, his profound weariness, his final, futile stand against the encroaching horror. And most importantly, she would paint herself, her own face, not as the hollowed, empty reflection the house desired, not as the empty vessel it sought to claim, but as the strong, defiant Clara Thorne, a woman of unyielding will, defiant spirit, and irreducible individuality. She would infuse every single brushstroke, every vibrant color with her most profound, intimate memories, her soul-crushing grief, her boundless, desperate love, her righteous, searing rage, her last desperate hope, emotions too complex, too intensely human, too chaotic, for the alien entity to fully digest, to assimilate without profound, agonizing discord. She believed, with a desperate, almost religious conviction, that by doing so, She could create a psychic poison, a resonant dissonance that would force the house to recoil, to retreat, to release its suffocating hold, to perhaps even sleep again, to fall into a prolonged dormancy. This was her final desperate stand, her ultimate act of artistic defiance, a last desperate prayer painted on canvas against cosmic oblivion, a blazing beacon of humanity against the encroaching void, as Clara, her body trembling with both the pervasive cold and profound agonizing effort, began to paint, her brushstrokes swift, desperate, almost frenzied. The house reacted violently with a primal, alien fury. The whispers from the walls intensified dramatically, growing louder, more insistent, a terrifying cacophony of pleas, promises, and veiled threats, attempting to penetrate her shattered concentration, to break her rapidly fading will, to draw her into its mental labyrinth. Objects around her studio, even the furniture, began to move violently, sliding off shelves with a crash, smashing against the walls, attempting to distract her, to overwhelm her with raw, disorienting chaos, to tear her gaze from the canvas, from her defiant act. The coldness in the room became unbearable, an agonizing physical assault that numbed her fingers, threatened to freeze her very blood in her veins, turning her to ice, to unfeeling stone. She felt a profound, relentless psychic pressure building. Relentlessly in her mind, a crushing weight of alien consciousness attempting to invade, to assimilate her, to break her spirit, to claim her as its own, to add her unique spark to its collective. She saw horrifying, vivid images flash through her mind, not her own cherished memories, but alien impressions, grotesque, shifting geometries of impossible colors, vast, pulsating root networks expanding into an endless cosmic void, all demanding her immediate, absolute surrender, promising profound, eternal peace if she would only let go, become one with the root, dissolve into the great knowing. She fought back with every last fiber of her being, with a tenacity born of love and despair, her teeth gritted so hard her jaw ached, her eyes fixed with desperate, unyielding intensity on the canvas, a lifeline to her identity. Every single brushstroke was an act of defiant will. Every vibrant color, a silent scream against the encroaching darkness, a defiant assertion of self, of her humanity. She infused the very paint with her most precious, intimate memories, her boundless love, her soul-crushing grief, her righteous, searing rage, her last flicker of hope, her very essence, her unique individuality, her irreducible self. She painted Emily, her vibrant, curious eyes, her infectious laughter, her innocent joy, before the vacuous emptiness had claimed her, before her spirit had been stolen. She painted Daniel, his quiet, studious demeanor, his keen intellect, his gentle smile, before the coldness had spread, before the whispers had taken hold. She painted Joshua, her beloved husband, his stoic determination, his desperate love, his profound weariness, his final, futile stand against the encroaching horror. And then she painted herself, her own face, not as the hollowed reflection the house desired, not as the empty vessel it sought to claim, but as the strong, defiant Clara Thorne, a woman whose spirit would not break, whose identity would not be consumed, whose will would not surrender, whose love was an unshakable fortress. She painted until her fingers bled, raw and aching, until her eyes burned with strain and exhaustion, until her very soul was poured onto the canvas, a vibrant, defiant explosion of concentrated human consciousness, a blazing beacon against the cosmic void, a last, desperate, glorious act of creation, the house screamed. Not an audible sound that could be heard by mortal ears, but a silent psychic shriek of pure, unadulterated pain and cosmic rage that tore through the very foundations of the Yellow House, resonating violently in Clara's mind, threatening to shatter her sanity into a million fragmented pieces. The walls of the house convulsed, deep, jagged cracks snaking through the plaster, ancient timbers groaning under an unseen, agonizing torment, the very structure groaning in protest. The coldness intensified to an unbearable, bone-aching chill that threatened to freeze her very marrow, to turn her to ice from within. And the cloying organic stench of decay and alien matter became overpowering, a sickening assault on her every sense, filling her lungs with primordial rot. The vibrant, defiant portraits on her canvas, infused with her pure, unyielding will, her defiant humanity, began to glow with a faint, shimmering, multicolored light, a beacon of irreducible human individuality, a profound, resonant dissonance that assailed the house's vast, alien consciousness, a poison it could not digest. The insidious whispers from the walls fractured into a chaotic cacophony of agonizing cries, 1,000 alien voices screaming in pure, raw pain, unable to digest the pure, unadulterated human essence, the defiant individuality she had poured into her art, into her very being. Clara felt her own body convulsing violently from the psychic feedback, her mind teetering on the very edge of breaking, but she held firm, pouring all her remaining strength, all her grief, all her fury, all her love, all her defiance, into maintaining the artistic counter-resonance, the psychic poison, the human shield. The painting, now a swirling vortex of vibrant, defiant colors, pulsed with a powerful protective energy, a shield against the house's assimilation, a barrier made of pure human will, of pure human soul. She knew this was her final stand, her ultimate, desperate act of defiance, a last desperate prayer painted on canvas against cosmic oblivion, a final, unyielding assertion of her own existence. The house, wounded, enraged, fought back with all its ancient, primordial might, lashing out with tendrils of psychic energy, but it could not consume this. It could not assimilate pure, unyielding, defiant individuality. It could not swallow the essence of a single human soul when that soul fought back with the power of creation. Finally, with a shuddering, earth-shattering tremor that violently rattled every window in Willow Creek for miles around, causing distant farmhouses to shake on their foundations and animals in their pens to shriek in terror, the pervasive hum from beneath the earth abruptly, completely ceased. The oppressive, bone-deep coldness dissipated, receding like an outgoing tide, replaced by the faint, comforting warmth of her studio, the familiar grounding scent of oil paint and turpentine. The sickening organic stench vanished, replaced by the clean, crisp air of dawn filtering through the cracked windows, bringing with it the fragile promise of a new, if profoundly altered, day. Absolute silence descended upon the yellow house once more, but this was a different silence, a bruised, wounded silence, a silence of profound absence, yet also of a terrible, hard-won, and deeply bittersweet victory. The house was silenced. Its hungry core, its monstrous alien heart, assaulted by Clara's defiant art, had retreated, wounded, dormant, forced back into its subterranean slumber, its insidious power temporarily quelled. But at what cost? Clara Thorne, her body utterly spent, collapsed to her knees amidst the chaos of her studio, her mind reeling from the psychic battle, from the profound, overwhelming effort, the unbearable weight of her sacrifice. She looked at her canvas, her magnum opus of defiance, her eyes blurred by tears and exhaustion. The portraits of Emily, Daniel, and Joshua, now vibrant and alive, gazed back at her, their eyes filled with love, not vacant emptiness, their essence preserved, a silent testament to her love. Her own portrait, fiercely defiant, pulsed with a quiet strength, a testament to her unyielding will. But the victory, she knew, was hollow, etched with a grief that would never heal, a profound, unfillable void. She had saved their essence, perhaps, prevented their complete assimilation into the alien consciousness, but their individual lives, their physical forms, their presence, were gone, dissolved into the cosmic ether, an unbearable price for a victory that left her utterly, profoundly alone, a sole survivor, burdened by an unspeakable truth. Clara Thorne never truly recovered from that dreadful night. She never painted again, her artistic spirit irrevocably scarred by the direct confrontation with the cosmic horror. She spent the rest of her days in solitary grief in the Yellow House, now a silent, wounded monument to her lost family, a self-appointed haunted guardian of its tragic history, a silent sentinel to the souls she had saved yet lost. She never spoke of the house's true nature, nor the terrible cost of its silencing, for she knew that some truths were too horrific, too profound, too utterly alien to bear, to be shared with a world that could not comprehend, a world that would never believe. She died a quiet, broken woman in 1955, her heart shattered, her spirit forever marked by the hum and the silence, carrying the terrible secret of the sentient house to her own grave, a secret that became one with the earth, waiting for its awakening. The official records of Willow Creek, like many small rural towns touched by inexplicable collective tragedies, simply state that the Thorne family, devastated by unspecified hardship and the unforgiving nature of frontier life, eventually abandoned their homestead and disappeared, their names slowly fading from local memory, becoming another casualty of the harsh, brutal realities of rural existence in the post-Civil War era. The disappearances of Daniel and Abigail were attributed to lost in the woods, a common enough, albeit tragic, fate for children in the vast, untamed forests of Maryland, and Joshua's to abandonment, a convenient if cold explanation for a man simply gone. Clara Thorne's death, decades later, was recorded as natural causes, the final quiet end of a lonely, haunted life. No one ever dared to purchase or inhabit the Yellow House again. It stood empty, slowly decaying for decades, its once vibrant yellow paint long since faded to a ghostly, sickly pale, almost bone-white, its grand facade crumbling, its tall windows dark and vacant like the empty eyes of the hollowed, gazed out over the desolate landscape, a silent, crumbling sentinel to its dark, forgotten past. The subterranean cavern beneath the house remained hidden, its secrets undisturbed, its monstrous heart dormant, but the earth immediately around the house often felt unnaturally cold, even in the height of summer, a chilling anomaly that defied the sun's warmth. The sickly, stunted grass that grew there appeared dark and twisted, growing in strange, geometric patterns around the property, defying natural growth, a subtle sign of the corruption beneath. Occasional visitors, usually brave, foolhardy teenagers on a dare or desperate drifters who sought temporary shelter from the elements, reported feeling a subtle sense of profound disorientation when near the house, a feeling of being utterly lost in familiar space, and a faint, almost imperceptible, low thrumming sound, resonating directly within their bones, a chilling echo of the house's former power, a ghostly vibration. Some even claimed to hear faint whispers carried on the wind, calling their names, promising forbidden knowledge or eternal peace within its cold, empty walls, a seductive siren's call. But none ever lingered long, driven away by an unshakable sense of profound dread, an instinct for self-preservation that screamed at them to flee. In the late 1990s, a new generation of researchers, driven by a blend of academic curiosity and a fascination with the unexplained, turned their attention to the long-abandoned Thorne estate. A team of parapsychologists and architectural historians from the esteemed University of Maryland, conducting a routine historical survey of abandoned Maryland estates, stumbled upon the remote, long-abandoned Yellow House. Their advanced instruments detected unusual and powerful electromagnetic anomalies emanating from the house and the ground beneath it, suggesting a massive, non-geological energy source. Ground-penetrating radar revealed a colossal, intricate, root-like organic network, far beneath the foundations, pulsing faintly with a weak, residual energy. Their report, filled with bewildered speculation and unscientific conclusions that defied all conventional understanding, was eventually classified and buried by obscure government agencies, citing geological instability and potential national security implications, familiar bureaucratic euphemisms for something far more sinister and inexplicable, something they could not comprehend or control. One of the lead parapsychologists, Dr. Marcus Bellwether, however, a driven and brilliant but increasingly obsessive man, managed to keep private copies of their unsettling findings, copies that would later prove to be his undoing. He developed an obsessive, terrifying theory. The house was not merely a building, nor was it truly destroyed. It was a sentient organism, a vast collective consciousness that was merely dormant, regenerating its strength, slowly recovering from Clara. Thorne's artistic assault. "It waits," he wrote in his personal journal, his hand shaking uncontrollably, his words imbued with a terrifying absolute certainty. "It learns, it adapts, it grows, and one day it will awaken again, stronger, more subtle, more insatiable. And when it does, it will not merely consume families, it will consume entire towns, entire cities, all of us. It will become Maryland itself, then the continent, then the world. It is the Earth's true ancient mind, its dreaming consciousness." Dr. Bellwether, like Dr. Reed and Dr. Jenkins before him, and countless others drawn into the cosmic horror, mysteriously disappeared in 2012, leaving behind only his cryptic, terrifying journals and a profound sense of unease among his few remaining contacts, a legacy of cosmic dread that continues to haunt the academic community. His last entry, scrawled in a frantic hand just days before his vanishing, spoke of the whispers growing louder, clearer, and the house's dreams becoming too real, too inviting, too beautiful to resist. A promise of ultimate understanding and boundless knowledge. Today, the Yellow House stands, a derelict, crumbling monument to a forgotten tragedy, its once vibrant yellow paint long since faded to a ghostly, sickly pale, almost bone-white. Its tall windows, dark and vacant like the empty eyes of the hollowed, gaze out over the desolate landscape, a silent, crumbling sentinel to its dark, forgotten past. The ground immediately around it, particularly above where the cavern lay, often feels unnaturally cold, even in the height of summer, a chilling anomaly that defies the sun's warmth. The sickly, stunted grass that grows there appeared dark and twisted, growing in strange, geometric patterns around the property, defying natural botanical laws, a subtle sign of the corruption beneath. And sometimes, on particularly still, humid nights, when the stars are impossibly bright in the vast, empty sky and the rural winds fall silent, travelers who stray too close to the area claim to hear it, a faint, almost imperceptible hum, a deep, resonant vibration that seems to come from beneath the very earth, a ghost of a sound, a promise of a terrible future, a summons from the depths of a primordial, alien consciousness. They say it's merely the wind, or the distant rumbling of trains, or the creaking of old timbers, but in their eyes there's a flicker of ancient inherited fear, a profound, unsettling knowledge of the Yellow House, still breathing, waiting, patiently, silently, beneath the silent plains, for its next harvest of souls, for its ultimate awakening. And when it awakens again, truly, irrevocably, what will it claim? What new forms will its consciousness take? What will it become? And for whom will its terrifying, silent whispers finally call? Will it be for you? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and support us for more content like this.